A brief history of Christmas. The first officially recorded celebration of Christmas dates to the 25th of December 336 CE, the year prior to the Emperor Constantine's death. Some years prior to that, there'd been some interest in trying to determine the actual date of Jesus' birth. And we can read about this in Clement of Alexandria from around 150 to 215 CE. He records that there was quite a bit of interest in calculating the date of Jesus' birth. And in his work called Stromates, written about 194 CE, he states that from the birth of Christ to the death of Commodus, Emperor Commodus, there were 194 years, 1 month and 13 days. How he knew this, or how someone knew this and calculated this, I have no idea. But if this was taken to be true, this would seem to indicate that Jesus was born on the 18th of November in the 3rd year BCE. However, Clement doesn't assume that this is necessarily true. He also says that other people place the birth of Christ in the 28th year of Augustus's reign, on the 25th of Pacon, the month Pacon, which would actually be the 20th of May in the year 2 BCE. So no one actually knew when Jesus was born, and various people were trying to calculate this. But there's no indication that at this stage the birth of Jesus was actually celebrated in any way. It would have been difficult to know when to celebrate it. The Roman Christian historian Sextus Julius Africanus, who lived around 160 to 240 CE, he dated the conception of Jesus to the 25th of March. And the Catholic Church still celebrates that as the feast of the Annunciation. And it seems that he chose the 25th of March because it was the same date upon which he held that the world was created. So the conception of Jesus was seen as the new creation. So the date for the birth of Jesus may not originally have had anything to do specifically with pagan celebrations that were occurring around the same date. However, dating the conception of Jesus to the 25th of March links it to the spring equinox. So this is the time of the new creation. It seems likely that other Christian feasts and festivals were celebrated by the end of the 2nd and the beginning of the early 3rd century, so around the time of Clement, in fact. The church was probably already celebrating such feasts as Easter and Epiphany. In the Eastern Church, Epiphany remained, and maybe remains still, more important than Christmas Day. Although in the Western Church, Epiphany was related to the visit of the Magi to the newborn Christ, in the Eastern Church it was linked more closely with the baptism of Jesus by John the Baptist, which was seen as his manifestation, his epiphany, his revealing before the world. Although about a century earlier, Sextus Julius Africanus had already linked the birth of Jesus with the 25th of December, it seems likely that Constantine later chose that date because it coincided with the Roman festival of Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, which was the birthday of the unconquered sun, which was celebrated on the 25th of December. It was celebrated around about that time, the winter solstice, because after that date, days begin to get longer, so the sun is on the increase again. And it makes sense that in order to Christianize the empire, that this date would be co-opted in favor of Jesus' birth. Why not convert the pagan festivals into Christian festivals? Whether Constantine knew about Sextus Julius Africanus and his having determined the 25th of December as the possible date of Jesus' birth, whether he knew that or not, I don't know, and how widespread that idea was by the time of Constantine, I don't know. But it certainly made sense to use this date and co-opt the festival of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. Interestingly, in the USA, during the colonial period, in early New England, especially in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, Puritans actually banned Christmas in the 17th century. They viewed it as unbiblical and an overly extravagant celebration which was tied to pagan traditions, and of course they're not wrong about that. In fact, celebrating Christmas was illegal in Massachusetts between 1659 and 1681, and it was punishable by fines if you did celebrate it. Other colonies, though, those with a stronger Anglican, Catholic, or Dutch influence, as in Virginia, Maryland, and New York, they observed Christmas more freely, although the celebrations were pretty modest and localized. Christmas wasn't celebrated widely during the period of the Revolutionary War because it was associated negatively with British customs. It wasn't regarded as a big deal. This began to change, though, during the 19th century, and on the 26th of June 1870, Congress actually declared Christmas a federal holiday in the USA. In England, from the earliest days when Anglo-Saxon culture became Christianized, Christmas was quite popular and many pre-existing pagan customs and celebrations were co-opted into its service. But even in England, during the time of the English Civil War and the rule of Oliver Cromwell, the Puritans actually banned Christmas between 1647 and 1660. They viewed it as a popish celebration, meaning a Catholic celebration, and also a pagan festival filled with all kinds of immorality. Traditional celebrations such as singing Christmas carols and feasting were prohibited, and shops were actually ordered to remain open on the 25th of December. Despite the ban, though, many ordinary people continued to celebrate Christmas in secret, defying the Puritan authorities. It's interesting that both in colonial America and in England, it was these more puritanical Christians who found Christmas problematic, often to the extent of actually banning its celebration. And some groups today who would describe themselves as Christian, although they wouldn't necessarily be identified as such by other Christians, maybe they're on the fringes of Christianity, but many of these groups continue to consider Christmas to be problematic, and many of them don't actually celebrate it or play down its celebration. I remember when I was working as a hospital chaplain in a psychiatric hospital, I used to send Christmas cards to a lot of members of staff. And I remember one year receiving a very angry response from a Jehovah's Witness. I didn't realise at the time, maybe I should have, but I didn't realise at the time that Jehovah's Witnesses didn't celebrate Christmas. And they didn't celebrate it on similar grounds to the earlier Puritans, namely its association with pagan traditions and its lack of a biblical basis. Other minority and fringe Christian groups also either play down the celebration of Christmas or avoid it altogether. The Church of God, the Amish and Old Order Mennonites, Christadelphians, some Pentecostal and holiness movements, and other groups influenced by Puritanism. And the objections are along similar lines. Its pagan origins. Many argue that Christmas incorporates these pre-Christian or pagan elements, such as celebrating the winter solstice. And they're quite correct, it does. There's also the lack of a biblical basis for celebrating it. The Bible doesn't command the celebration of Jesus' birth. It certainly doesn't specify the 25th of December as the date of Jesus' birth. Others criticise the modern secular and materialistic celebration of Christmas. It's overly commercialised, and this distracts from its original spiritual meaning. Maybe it's time for pagans to take back their celebration of Sol Invictus, although none of that symbolism really works particularly well here in the land down under.